18th, but not on the 25th or the 1st of April.
Exactly.
That's it.
And with that, we'll flip on. Oh, and most importantly for the people here, as I don't see Norm online, I believe, check this out, the Stiesel third season drops on Netflix also on the 24th. So if you're not busy preparing and you like need something to do with that hour, the third season of Stiesel will supposed to pop. No, I knew he was supposed to call me that number. I didn't even imagine that would be me. That's on the 24th. In any event, we are going to leap in. Well, maybe we won't. Also, by way of noting on Passover front, like if you need help, Dorit will send out chametz sale information and things like this, and online haggadot and things like this. All of that will be online, or you can find it at rabbiselzberg.blogspot.com. I have a post of online haggadot, links to sell chametz, link for a siyum for Ta'anit Bechorot if you want to a place to learn and break the fast 2 weeks from today. Things like that are all listed there, and Dorit will include a link in the email. Now, enough religion, back to the Tanakh. We're going to do chapter 2 of Daniel. Say the bracha for Torah study, which is Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu v'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And we're going to throw in with chapter 2 of Daniel. There'll be something for us to get through. Some of this gets a little wordy, but you'll see in chapter 1. You remember, like Daniel is living in exile. He's part of the Babylonian exile, and he's living in Babylon, and he's sort of chosen for to be one of the young servants in the king's court, in Nebuchadnezzar's court, along with a few of his friends, and now and he sort of like asserts his Jewishness, and God helps him out that way, like very much like God helps him out, sort of like in the Joseph story, like people are well disposed to him, and the like. The chapter 2 will have even stronger parallels to Joseph, and we'll dive right in. Question before I start? Then I'll dive right in. So this is chapter 2 of Daniel. It says, in the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's kingship, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, and his heart pounded, and his sleep was ruined. This, of course, totally familiar, right? This is how Joseph will rise from the dungeon, and of course, how more recently in our minds, how Mordechai will rise from his fate. Mordechai, of course, is marked for death, and is saved really by the king dreaming dreams and being and sort of being woken up in the middle of the night by them, right? So notice the link between the two. It's not the only the three main balls that we have in the air on this are Daniel and Esther and Joseph. Keep all those in mind. And the king said, verse 2, and the king said to all the soothsayers and the wizards and the magicians and the Chaldeans to explain the king's dreams to him. And they came and stood before the king. Now, soothsayers, wizards, magicians, these are all like different types of, of that. Hartumim, familiar from also from the Exodus story, right? These are the people in the Egyptian court who are doing the same tricks, quote unquote, that Moshe is doing for Pharaoh. the Art Scroll translates necromancers, astrologers, sorcerers, and Chaldeans. Now, Chaldeans here, again, Art Scroll, Thurs, and Stargazers, as alternates, because the Chaldeans were famous for their skills in soothsaying and divination. The ethnic name came to indicate those who practiced these arts. Now, this is like, though it's not necessarily a proper term to use, but in English, the closest parallel is like gypsy, right? Like gypsy in English, whether or not you do use it, or we should use it, in common 20th century certainly usage, meant a specific thing, right? Essentially, like gypsy was a synonym for fortune teller, right? In the same way, and maybe in the same spirit, in some places, Jew meant salesman. So Chaldeans are an ethnic group, but they're just, but soothsayers are called Chaldeans, and again, in the same way, and again, 20th century America, fortune teller could be called a gypsy, right? That sort of thing, by the way, maybe obviously is fascinating to me. So he calls in all of the people with these skills that, again, very reminiscent of the Pharaoh in the Joseph story and the Pharaoh in the Exodus story, and of course Ahasuerus in the Purim story. And the king said to them, "I've dreamed a dream, and my heart pounded, wanting to know the dream." And the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic, and this is where the story pivots, which is to say, chapter 1 and these 3 verses in chapter 2 were all in Hebrew. Now the book switches to Aramaic. Verse 4, it switches to Aramaic, and will stay in Aramaic through the end of chapter 7. So here the language, obviously we're doing this in English, but the language here switches from Hebrew to Aramaic with verse 5. So know that that's going on. We don't pick that up obviously in translation, but but maybe like Dorothy moving from black and white to color, like there's a significant change going on here in the narrative, like just beneath the surface. Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic. "May the king live forever. Say the dream to your servants, and we shall tell its meaning." Right? Reasonable enough request. 5, the king answered and said, "The matter has been determined by me. If you do not explain to me the dream and its meaning, you will be cut to pieces, and your houses will be turned into dung heaps. But if you tell the dream and its meaning, gifts and presents and great honor you shall receive from me. Therefore, tell me the dream and its meaning." Here, things get harder than in Joseph's story and in Esther's story. Of course, in the Joseph story, which is the closest parallel, the king brings in all of his soothsayers and all of his dream diviners and things like this, and says, "This was my dream. What does it mean? There were 7 fat cows, there were 7 thin cows, etc., etc., etc." Right? And Joseph is the only one who can say, "This is what it means. 7 fat cows are this, 7 lean cows are this." Right? In the case of Ahasuerus, of course, like it's not like interpreting the dream. It's more just that it's that his sleep is disturbed and he wakes up in the middle of the night. But here, Nebuchadnezzar is like, no. If you are truly good at your job, you're not going to tell me what the dream means only. You're going to tell me what the dream was. If you've got this skill, tell me what I dreamed and tell me what it means. So this is awesome. This is like Joseph was playing in AA ball, and Nebuchadnezzar is really throwing heat, right? This is a whole different level.
Rabbi?
Yep.
Is this the Nebuchadnezzar that besieged Jerusalem and created the exile, or is this another Nebuchadnezzar because it says it's only the second year of his reign.
This is, I mean, so the key thing is that the timeline's not going to work out, right? So the way you understand history, or the way Westerners understand history, is not consistent with the name, with the way that that the writer of the book of Daniel, or certainly in the Tanakh in general, understands history. So that's the first thing to note. But the answer is yes, same one, right? That's if you look at how it begins in chapter 1, right? The third year of the king Jehoiakim of Judah, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon came to Jerusalem and laid siege to it, right? This is the so it's the same Nebuchadnezzar, even if the timeline sort of logically doesn't work. Again, sort of, it's not, where in Esther, as I mentioned, it's sort of clear that it's not meant to be taken literally. Here, it's not clear whether or not we're supposed to think of this as a literal historical event. Alter's note on your question, Ed, is this notation about the second year is a much discussed contradiction, because in chapter 1, it's the third year of King Nebuchadnezzar's reign that Daniel and his 3 friends are sent off for 3 years of education. Afterwards, they're brought back to the court. So so chapter 1 implies that this couldn't be taking place before the 6th year of his reign. None of the proposal for resolving this difficulty is entirely convincing. So whatever we want to do with it, whether it's a typo, whether it's some other way of reading it, it's an issue that you're right to pick up on. In any event, he throws down this extra challenge, right? Tell me the dream and its meaning, at which point you have to imagine all of the necromancers and dream diviners who have made their living having people tell them their dreams and then tell them their meaning. Like when they're told by the king, you have to tell me what I dreamt, otherwise I'm literally going to chop you up. There has to be a hamana moment. How are they going to get through if there's a way you do that job, and it's tough if you're asked to know what somebody dreamt.
But if the king forgot the dream, couldn't they tell him anything and then wait for the king to say, "Oh, that's wrong"? Or
he hasn't forgotten the dream. He just wants it. It seems that this is a test. I've dreamed a dream, my heart pounded, wanting to know the dream, meaning so it's not quite clear. He could say, no, that's not it. If it doesn't ring true to him. So whether or not he in fact remembers it, blow for blow, he wants it told to him. It's not necessarily that he's forgotten it.
Isn't it a way to find out if they're really telling him the truth?
Yeah. And that's tough if you're in the dream divining business.
Yeah.
Again, easier to interpret than to tell. You have to go to the shore to find that out, to go to a fortune teller on the shore. Anyway, yeah.
Rabbi?
Yep.
Isn't it ultimately his test to see if there's a God? Because in a sense, this is his way of finding out if he ultimately knows that only God can give Daniel this kind of insight and power, because he's only of the flesh. So this would be, if Daniel can translate this dream, he has to have some kind of divine information, and therefore he is then as powerful as God in a way. I mean, it must be his double check on whether there is somebody more powerful than he is.
Well, sure, yeah. So yes, and that's of course the point. That's part of the one of the narrative flaws, as it were, in the Joseph story, is that who knows that Joseph is right until the famine comes, right? Like Joseph, in fact, it does have this, power from God, but you don't know that until what he says actually comes to pass. This is the way to do it, right? So yes, because he's asking for information that nobody could possibly know. So yeah, great test, because obviously, yeah, because tell me what the dream means, whatever, they can tell you anything.
It's a catch-22.
Right. Yeah. So, well, meaning, yeah, there's no way to know outside of actual power, which, yeah. What makes this fun? The verse 7. I answered a second time and said, let the king say the dream to his servants, and we shall tell its meaning. Right? That's a gimme, right? If you're of course they have to say that, right? Dude, this is how the game works. You tell us the dream, we tell you its meaning. That's what we do, right? You hold out your poem, and I'll tell you what it all means, right? You can't ask me like where the lines are on your poem and what they mean. Like, you have to show it to me, right? It's sort of like the ruse doesn't work the way the king is proposing it, right? Like there's a tacit agreement between people who do supernatural feats and those who are contracting them to do it, and part of it is like, let's let the fiction work. They have to respectfully find a way to be like, dude, let the fiction work. The king say the dream to his servants, and we shall tell its meaning. The king answered and said, indeed, I know that you are buying time, because you have seen the matter was determined by me. For if you do not explain the dream to me, there is but one decree for you, and you have prepared a false and lying word to say to me until time passes. Therefore say to me the dream, and I shall know that you have told me its meaning. And an altar notes when he says, like, I know that you are buying time. He says, though this idiom, buying time, may sound excessively contemporary in English, it is the precise literal sense of the Aramaic. What are we looking at there for the Aramaic? De Edna Antun. Yeah. You're buying time. So same in English, same in ancient Aramaic. You're buying time, and it means the same thing. Like you're dissembling to delay. And of course, as we all know, like the whole point of a fortune teller or a dream teller is that they're making it up, and it can't happen. So he's obviously calling them on that fact, and says, it's sort of like this moment of like, you've been taking me for a ride all these years. Now I want now the bill is coming due. Verse 10. The Chaldeans answered before the king and said, there's no man on earth who can tell the word of the king, because no great and powerful king has asked a thing like this of any soothsayer, wizard, or Chaldean. And the matter that the king has asked is grave, and there are no others that can tell before the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh, right? So like, look, you're asking something impossible, like our skills, which are totally, totally real, are in that you tell us the dream and we tell you its meaning. Like, what you're asking isn't something that human beings can do. Only gods can do this, and the gods, they don't live with us. Like, we're like, our power flows from it. So like this, what you're asking is something impossible. You can't ask this of it. This is not the deal. I love this. It feels like a great exchange, right? And obviously the biblical text is mocking the soothsayers. 12, because of this, the king raged and was very angry and thought to put to death all the sages of Babylonia. And a decree was issued that the sages were to be killed, and Daniel and his friends were to be killed, right? They're just sort of like lumped in with everybody else. Like this again, probably a new paragraph, or like verse 10 probably should have been a new paragraph, and probably a new paragraph here too. If you're looking in the Alter translation, like he doesn't divide it into paragraphs the same way, but you would. 14. Then did Daniel respond with counsel and insight to Arioch, chief of the king's executioners, who had gone out to call the sages of Babylon, right? Like, so like the executioners sort of like, knocking on people's doors saying, making arrangements. And Daniel starts to deal with the situation. Verse 15, he spoke out and said to Arioch, the king's regent, what is the severe decree from the king? And Arioch informed Daniel of the matter. And Daniel went and asked of the king that time be given to him to tell the meaning to the king. Then Daniel went to his house and informed Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his friends, of the matter, to ask the mercy of God of the heavens about this mystery. And Daniel and his friends would not perish with the rest of the sages of Babylonia, right? So they go and they daven, they pray. Then was the mystery revealed to Daniel in a night vision. Right, so like this is sort of key thing, like the though again, as Halter notes, though the soothsayers were accused of buying time, Daniel asked for a little bit of moment, but different thing, like to be able to pray to God for this. The answers are revealed to him, right? Adina, Daniel, the Chazia, the Laila, Raza, Gali, right? It's revealed to him. Raza is still like the sense of secret, right? And Alter notes the two words Raza Gali occur with variations throughout the story. They constitute an Aramaic equivalent of the etymological sense of apocalypse in Greek. In the dream itself proves to be incipiently apocalyptic, right? So this is, remember, apocalypse is that through a supernatural way, secrets are revealed to a human being, predicting significant changes in this world of a sort of like earth-shattering and political sort. Daniel, you'll see, like it sort of has a different flavor than the Joseph interpretations. Joseph, of course, is able to interpret dreams, but Joseph is given Joseph. I'm trying to formulate my mind. Joseph is given information and comes up with a bureaucratic solution to the stuff that's going to happen. What Daniel's told are going to be things that there's sort of like no way around. There's not going to be a bureaucratic solution for it. So keep it, and that's sort of like the difference. It's things that are going to happen. So watch how this plays out. 19 again, then was a mystery revealed to Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of the heavens. Daniel spoke out and said, may the name of God be blessed forever and ever, for the wisdom and strength are his. Now that line again, so this is the beginning of Daniel's monologue, but before we go into Daniel's response is, on one thing, the Hebrew on that, or the Aramaic on that is, Ana Daniel, lahave shmei ta'alta mevrech mina alam va'ad alma. And those are the closest words that the Tanakh is going to get into what's going to become the Kaddish, right? The Kaddish that we know is one, of course, in Aramaic. Like this section of the Tanakh is uniquely in Aramaic. Parts of Job as well. Job, like Daniel, will switch back and forth with Aramaic and Hebrew. Daniel and Job are the two books that do that. Here, these sort of words, Lahave Shmei the Alta Mevarech Min Alma Ba'ad Alma is the closest that that we're going to get to the Kaddish. in this book. Now that and the JSP sort of notes that the central words of a later Jewish Kaddish prayer are based on the beginning of this verse, verse 20. So that and that's the technical word for that is that it's a sort of like doxology, the that sort of an intense praise of God, and that you see, may the name of God be blessed forever and forever, like that that's part of like the response in the Kaddish that we have. So this is sort of like a proto version of that. If it's shown up to the evening class at the beginning of Brachot, of the volume of Talmud that we're looking at, there's also a proto Kaddish. This is a proto Kaddish. Daniel,
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. So if you look at that, the very last line says, the last two lines say, "For now you have let me know what we asked of you," you with a capital Y. Y. "You have let us know what concerns the king." Are they talking, the king is not capitalized. It's not meant to be a reference to God, correct? In other words, this prayer is very particular to this story. What do they say? That God has revealed to them what this dream is going to be about?
So let's So let's look at this and then we'll unpack your question, right? So Daniel blessed the God of the heavens. Daniel spoke out and said, may the name of God be blessed forever and forever. For wisdom and strength are his. And he changes the times and the seasons, takes kings away and raises up kings, gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who know discernment. He lays bare the deep and hidden things, knows what is in darkness, and light dwells with him. To you, God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise that you have granted me wisdom and strength, and now you have made known to me that which we asked of you. For the matters of the king, you have made known to us. So yes, so Daniel is saying a prayer for his moment in time, and not he's not not as we might say davening out of the siddur. He's not davening out of a siddur, and he's not like consciously creating a prayer to be repeated. He's spontaneously praying. Does that answer your question?
So clearly then when whomever put the Kaddish together and used this as a source, they moderated that.
Correct. Yeah. That's what will happen with much of the siddur, right? Like which is that you take again, the modern word would be sampling, right? That they sample ideas and phrases from elsewhere, and they put it and they put it and they work it into a different thing. And even the beginning of verse 21, who mashne danaya zamna mahadia, the like the beginning of that, like the God changes seasons. It's the Aramaic is team. Where does changes in the seasons appear? It's in the tefillah. Sorry for the pause. In Ma'ariv Aravim, the first blessing after the Shema, you say it every evening, or certainly every Friday evening, right? Right. B'chokhmah potech sha'arim, with wisdom you open the gates of dawn. V'tvuna mishaneh itim, and whose understanding changes the seasons, right? Machlivet hazmanim is like that is a reworking of verse 21. Who mashne idana Zimna Mahadena Malachim, right? So that like listen to the altar's translation of verse 21, and he, God, changes the times and the seasons, takes king away and raises up kings, gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who know discernment. In Mariva Aravim, whose wisdom opens the gates of dawn, whose understanding changes the day's division or the season's division, whose will sets the succession of the seasons, arranges the stars in the sky, right? Like it's a reworking of the same idea. So you see how Daniel, who we know has a direct line to God, is providing the sort of like raw material for the rabbis to work into what will become the prayers. And the same thing, by the way, for the fourth blessing of the Amidah, the first of the weekday blessings that we say each weekday, morning, afternoon, right? Like you graciously endow human beings with knowledge and teach understanding of humanity. May you grace us with knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Blessed are you, Adonai, who bestows knowledge, right? Like that's also in that, gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who know discernment, right? Like this is the same wording is used there. So when the sages like sort of created this Siddur, as it were, they're not sitting around having a brainstorming session. They're using prayers from the Tanakh as their raw material. And you see this here with the Kaddish, with Mariv Aravim, and the and Atachunin Ladam Da, the fourth blessing of the Amidah.
Rabbi?
Yep.
Why do you prefer Alter's translation to teach from? Because as you're reading, and I have the JPS in front of me, it's different, and I like Alter's word choice.
That's why.
Okay.
He's so I have the JPS in front of me as well. I have the art scroll in front of me as well. Like for perspective, Alter, he has an ear for the Hebrew and an ear for poetic English. So what makes his translation work is that it has the immediacy of the poetry while trying to remain faithful, and the footnote always like sort of like explains his decisions, and the JSB explains decisions as well, but he sort of does it more completely, and the JPS has that committee feel where the language is just a little more stilted and a little more inert. And it's the standard Jewish translation. Alter is still something of a designer, like what the proper word is. It's still a bit of the Whole Foods version of everything, whereas the JPS is the Cheerios that everyone gets and everyone knows, and that has been standard in the Jewish world for the last 50 years. Alter just has a better ear, and like because he doesn't have a committee to deal with, like it rings a little sharper.
So Rabbi, to that point, would you say that he's in some ways more modern? If you look at his choice of the word discernment versus the JPS choice of the word wisdom, I mean, discernment is a much more, it's a word that's used a lot more in modern text study or in modern spiritual direction, if you will.
Right. So we'll sort of like pick apart that one line, or we are picking apart that one line, like the like this is 21, like right, and JPS here actually like marks off Daniel's speech as poetry, which is nice, which neither Alter nor Art Scroll do. So it's nice to have this marked off as poetry in JPS, right? That the name of God be blessed forever and ever, for wisdom and power are his. He changes times and seasons, removes kings and installs kings. He gives the wise their wisdom and knowledge to those who know. as opposed to gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who know discernment. Art Scrolls gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who know how to reason. Vina. Bina is usually wisdom. I actually do think wisdom is a good word there. It's hard to say. Like certainly in that when translating that bracha, there are three different kinds of wisdom that we call upon. Now we're out of Daniel a little bit more into tefillah, right? So I'll do this for a moment, then we'll bounce back off of it, right? Dea, Bina, Vaskel. Dea, love some translated with knowledge. Bina, our word here is understanding. Vaskel, wisdom. Sometimes you could go with Dea, knowledge, Bina, understanding, or wisdom, and Vaskel, discernment, which is like a different sort of thing, right? Like each one is supposed to have a different sense of it, right? Like one is sort of like knowing the facts. One is being able to like process them. And one, wisdom, could also be discernment, which is like, discernment is like, it has a sense of being able to know when to apply things. Anyway, I'm gonna move on from it, but I think his word choices feel a little more sharp. They can be argued still, but they're a little sharper. I'm gonna continue, verse 24. Because of this, Daniel came to Arioch, who the king had appointed to put to death all the saints of Babylonia. He went and thus said to him. So again, so God grants Daniel the wisdom. Daniel's like, all right, I got this. Says a praise to God, reveals it to him at night. Remember, just like in the Torah, that what's the difference between Moses and everyone else? Moses gets God's wisdom, straight into his vein, as it were. He mainlines God's presence, right? Face to face, panim al panim. Whereas everyone else gets God's wisdom, sort of like at night, it comes to them, or in some sort of other way, not as sharp. Daniel gets this at night, so it's clear to him. But again, what we learn at night is different from what we learn during the day. He went and thus said to him, do not, so Daniel then wakes up, goes to the guy, the executioner, back half of verse 24. Do not put to death the sages of Babylonia. Bring me before the king, and I will tell the meaning to the king, right? Hold the phone. Verse 25, thus did Arioch rush to bring Daniel before the king, and thus he said to him, there's a man of the exiles of Judah who explained the meaning to the king, right? So again, this is to Ed's earlier sort of point on timeline. This is one of the Judeans who we conquered in exile, like one of those guys who worship that God. He says he's going to do it. The king answered and said to Daniel, his name was Balthazar. Remember that from before. He had his proper Babylonian name because it's bizarre to walk around as a Daniel on the streets of Babylon. Can you explain to me the dream I saw and its meaning? Right? Again, we got two steps here. Tell me the dream, then tell me its meaning. Right? Much higher lift than what Joseph had to do. Verse 27. Daniel answered, but similar to Joseph in that, again, in prison, as it were, decree of death, as it were. Same thing with Joseph's in prison when he's lifted out by interpreting the dream. Mordecai has a mark of death on him before the fact of a disturbed sleep saves him, right? So these are sort of the parallel versions out there. Daniel answered before the king, the mystery of which the king has asked, sages, wizards, soothsayers, and diviners cannot tell the king. But there is a God in the heavens who reveals mysteries and has made known to the king what will be in the latter days, your dream and the visions in your head as you lay asleep. This is it. So again, Daniel starts out, good thing, nobody can know this but me. And the only way I can know this is that there's a God in heaven, and that God is the God of the Judeans, the God of the world. So great leader. And also, like, this is what's going to happen. Bacharita Yamim, or Acharit Yomaya in Aramaic. In the context, it is it's in days to come, but it has the sense of like at the end of days, and will come to me at the end of days. And this is like, again, when we say apocalyptic, it's because people will begin to read this stuff as referring to the end of days, whatever that means. You king, verse 29, you king, your thought has risen as you lay asleep of what will be in the time to come, and the revealer of mysteries, this is a great name for God, the revealer of mysteries, right, has made known to you what will be. As for me, not through wisdom that is in me, more than all the living men has the mystery been revealed to me, but in order to make known to the king the meaning, that you may know your heart's thoughts. Right? This is, Daniel knows how to work this. You, king, were seeing, and look, a huge statue. So now this is again, new paragraph with verse 31. He's telling him the dream. You, king, were seeing, and look, a huge statue. The statue was great, and its brilliance was abundant. It was standing before you, and its appearance was fearsome. The statue, its head was goodly gold, its chest and arms were silver, its loins and its thighs were bronze. Its legs were iron, and its feet part iron and part clay. And again, this is part of why I chose this book, is even it's a long work for the payoff, but this is obviously where the English phrase, the Indian feet of clay, comes from, right? Like all of the precious metals that make up the body in differing parts are strong and not easily broken, and of course the feet of clay, despite the precious metals above it, are the flaw that can topple it. Just like in English, like if you have a hero who with a hero of feet of clay is despite the great value, there was some flaw that brings down said hero. Norm, we're here. We wouldn't be checking. We've gone from checking clocks on one politician to looking to Albany for the next one, right? So,
Does this mean I am to start a new clock?
New clock, rather than set to Washington time, it's set to Albany time. We're bipartisan in our heroes of feet of clay. But yes, this is what's going on. So this is a source of it. You see exactly what it is, right? Like the and Alder knows, right? The odd mixture of iron and clay suggests that both so this is what we're going to interpret is that there's that the four levels of the great statue are four different kingdoms, and the fourth kingdom is will be broken as clay can be broken. So the fourth kingdom, right? Like the and obviously that fells the whole structure, right? The Alter's comment on this: as we go down the body of the statue, gold, silver, bronze, iron, right? The metals progressively decrease in value, right? The head is gold, the torso silver, the legs are bronze, and the feet are iron and clay. Like it's so going down in value. The 4 metals linked with 4 ages obviously correspond to progressive decline in Hesiod's works and days. As we all remember from our Hesiod. It was possible their late author actually read Hesiod. Elsewhere in Daniel, Greek loanwords appear, like meaning that the this isn't taking, the author seems to be writing again in the 2nd century BCE, so long after Greek contact, even though the immersion in Greek culture, even though this story is taking place pre-contact with Greece, the author is in fact writing post-contact with Greece. The myth of the 4 ages and 4 kingdoms is equally tested in old Iranian literature and seems likely that they had some currency throughout the Eastern Mediterranean Near East. In its Iranian version, the first kingdom was Assyria, but Daniel substitutes Babylonia because it is the empire subdued in the king that subdued the kingdom of Judah. The other 3 then would be Media, Persia, and Greece. Rashi and Ibn Ezra see Rome as the 4th kingdom in keeping with rabbinic historical typology, but Rome is too late for inclusion in Daniel, which is to say that the different metals are supposed to represent different kingdoms that will sort of like rise and fall and rise, dominate, and then fall. For the 4th kingdom is to the author probably Greece, because he's living in Maccabean times, and the great kingdom that has to be defeated for the people to live in freedom is Greece. For the rabbis, that will be Rome. Greece and Rome will sort of get mashed up for the rabbis when they need to occasionally. Let's continue with it, right? So I can start with 32 again, so we can read straight through. That statue, its head was goodly gold. Its chest and arms were silver. Its loins and thighs were bronze. Its legs were iron, and its feet were part iron and part clay. You were watching till a stone hewed, not by hands, struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and shattered them. Then all together the iron, clay, bronze, silver, and gold were shattered and became like chaff from the summer threshing floor, and no place was found for them, right? Spread about, useless. And the stone that struck the statue became a great mountain and filled all the earth. This is the dream, and its meaning we shall say before the king. New paragraph. You are king, and even king of kings, to whom the God of the heavens has given power and might and honor, right? Like saying, Nebuchadnezzar, you brought down God's people, God's kingdom, Jerusalem, you destroyed it. So God gave all this power to you. So you're the king of kings, as it were. 38, and wherever human beings, beasts of the field, and fowl of the heaven live, he, God, has given them into your hand and caused you to rule over them all. You are the head of gold, and after you shall arise another kingdom, inferior to yours, and a 3rd kingdom of bronze shall rule over all the earth. And a 4th kingdom shall be strong as iron, because iron shatters and splinters all things, and like smashing iron, all these it shall shatter and smash. And as to the feet and the toes you saw, part potter's clay and part iron, the kingdom shall be split, and it shall have the strength of iron, because you saw iron mixed with clay from the soil. And as to the toes, part iron and part clay, some of the kingdom shall be strong, and some of it shall be fragile. And as to your seeing iron mixed with clay from the soil, they shall be mixed with human seed, and shall not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of these kings of the gods of heavens shall establish a kingdom that shall never be destroyed. To another people it shall not be abandoned. It shall shatter and be put to the ends of all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever, because you have seen that from a mountain a stone was hewed not by hands, and smashed the iron, bronze, clay, silver, and gold, that the great God has made known to the king what shall be after this, and the dream is true, and its meaning certain. So this is Daniel's interpretation. It means something like, you are the most powerful king, you're the gold, no one's better than you. And at the same time, JPS's thing is that there will be different kingdoms, Daniel probably understands as being Babylonia, Media, north of Iran, Persia, and Greece, and that one is going to conquer the other. You, Babylon, are going to be conquered by somebody else, and then so on and so forth. Like everyone's going to be conquered in time. Finally, the last great kingdom, the one of iron, will be Greece, and that's going to be broken up. These are the toes, right? Just like Alexander's kingdom is going to conquer all the ones that came before. That's the iron, but that itself is going to be broken up after Alexander's death. That's going to be broken up into 3 separate sections, right? The Seleucids are going to be the ones that are going to be prominent in the Hanukkah story, but this is Daniel's thing. It's like that there are 4 kingdoms. One, you're the gold head. God has given, you're great because you conquered Judea, so you're the gold, but you're going to be conquered by the silver, and the silver is going to be Media or Persia. You're going to be who themselves are going to be conquered, and they're going to be conquered, and that will give rise to the final kingdom, which will last forever. Right. So this is the apocalyptic sense of it, right? That there'll be that there can be these kingdoms one after the other, and out of this destruction will become one true lasting kingdom. Now, whether or not that makes sense is sort of less important, because I want to finish all of this today. I want to make sure we get to the end of chapter 2, then we'll go to questions. Then did verse 46, new paragraph. Then did King Nebuchadnezzar fall on his face, and he bowed down to Daniel, and he said to offer him a grain offering and incense. The king answered Daniel and said, in truth, your God is the God of gods and the master of kings and the revealer of mysteries, for you were able to reveal this mystery, right? So even though he just predicted Nebuchadnezzar's downfall, or his kingdom's downfall, he gets credit, and the king bows to Daniel. Because obviously, as Nancy indicated earlier, he just did something that you could only do if God revealed it to you. He told him not only the meaning, but also the content of the dream. And obviously the content of the dream was correct, so he has to assume that the meaning is correct, and that he has a line to God here. Then did the king make Daniel great, and he gave him many gifts, and caused him to rule over all the province of Babylonia, and made him chief governor over all the sages of Babylonia. And Daniel asked of the king, and he appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the work of the province of Babylonia, and Daniel served in the king's gate. Oh my gosh, this is the same thing that happened to Joseph. Joseph is, interprets the dream and then made prime minister. And this is also parallel to what happens to Mordecai. Mordecai, of course, helps out the king, as it were, and then is made prime minister, and he serves Betra Malka in the gate of the king. And of course, Mordecai is famous for hanging out in the king's gate. Again, these are sort of like the 3 balls that you keep in the air: Daniel, Esther, and Joseph. All sort of you can reference each other, as it were. The apocalypse, again, what makes this different about the others is that there's no way around it. Remember, Joseph interprets the king's dreams and finds a way around it, right? There's going to be a famine. This is how we're going to deal with it. Here, Daniel says, essentially, like the lot is cast. The dream is, this is what is going to happen. God ordains it. There is no way around it. And that's, of course, what gives apocalypses their flavor, right? Which is that the end of days is coming, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's coming. And that's different. It's different. Yeah.
If I was one of the sages who he was ready to kill, I would have called Daniel on this. I would have said, this guy can tell you anything. He speaks for God. How do I know? Especially if my life was on the line. I mean, why are they laying down?
They didn't know it in advance, meaning that this Daniel doesn't seem to have these powers before this moment.
Oh, so they don't know what he said, but after he said it,
Right.
It didn't look good. It didn't look good for them.
Correct. Here at least, they're not, he's put in charge of them, but he's not, they don't get killed, so they're probably happy. But
he's predicting Nebuchadnezzar's downfall.
Mhm.
He's telling him that's what God says. He's going to lose.
Yep. Yep.
Boy, if I was a soothsayer, I'd have a backup to this plan.
Exactly.
But-
Lives to tell the tale. Now, so exactly, like this obviously is not a thing. And and so Alter's note on that one, 46, the prostration before a human being. He tells the king that you're going to fall apart, and the king bows down to him, and gives him gifts. But obviously, the guy who tells you what your dream was accurately can sort of say anything after that, because he just said something that he could not possibly know if he were, if he didn't have somebody powerful, capital uppercase S in his corner. So that and the king's response, rather than off with your head was the earlier order. This is, you can keep it. And his response is, again, in truth, your God is the God of gods, right? And
he buys the argument. He buys it. He buys it. Yeah.
And seems to, and again, like sort of like the king appears to be a virtual convert to monotheism.
If I may interrupt, that's the whole point of our liturgy. Our God is faith, and we believe, because he could have cut off his head, and that would be heresy. I mean, our heroes in our books, in our Tanakh, our heroes that have a avenue to God and speak to God, and with faith they are believed, and their prophecies are believed, and that's what our story is about.
So here it's not faith.
Well, he was believed, though. I mean, the king believed him.
He's believed because he produced information that, like, he survived a test. In the Joseph story, it's sort of like faith. Oh, you gave me a good explanation, and it turns out to be true. But again, like sort of like, well, why do you believe him in that moment? Well, he just does. Here, this is
It was a night vision he had.
Yeah, but Daniel is able. Daniel works a miracle. He doesn't just tell a fortune. He works a miracle, or God has him work a miracle, right? Like so. So the king has faith in him, but like I would say for good reason. Within this, within the confines of the story.
Or would you say the king believes in our God?
I mean, he. Yeah, I mean, he certainly seems like, well, again, clearly he's saying clearly your God is the best God. Like there's really no arguing the point.
He accepts that power over him.
Yeah, he bows down. Like, so again, like
that's the miracle.
Right, that's right. He's like, well, like if you've got a God that can have you tell me my dreams, we've got a winner. Like this isn't a random thing. This isn't Joseph. It's more impressive than Joseph, and it's not the Esther story. It's certainly more impressive than that. Like in terms of Daniel like accessing something that no human being could know. So that, but the point of the story, in fact, obviously, is a couple of things. One, Daniel's supernatural powers. Two, or God grants him this. Two, it puts Daniel in our familiar Joseph Mordecai role, which is second in command of a foreign empire, Henry Kissinger. And the sort of prediction of the future, right? What the author is probably actually saying is Nebuchadnezzar is the first golden kingdom that conquered the temple. The fourth one is Greece, and we're fighting them now. This is because he's right, because again, like so his audience is probably in Maccabean times, right? We're fighting this fourth kingdom, and we're gonna fell them for a permanent eternal kingdom. So that's also the point of this story, is that the mighty kingdom is going to fall, or then the rabbis will read that fourth kingdom not as Greece but as Rome, right? We will fell this mighty kingdom of iron, Greece, Rome, and establish an eternal kingdom. That's what Daniel's really predicting. Is that it's for his time, not Nebuchadnezzar's time.
Amen.
So,
Rabbi,
this, yeah.
Rabbi, you said that this was a prototype of the Kaddish and of some prayers. What it's calling to mind for me with this gold and the silver and the feet of clay is in the Machzor for Yom Kippur, where God is the
Potter.
potter and so forth.
Right.
Was it a prototype also for that?
Right. So I mean, certainly the clay is common in each thing. Like that theme of that, which is on Kol Nidrei night, like is that we are as clay in the potter's hands, right? God forms us. Here it's a little different from that, but it gives the poet a good grounding in the tradition to like make a clay reference. Though the how it's used is different in each instance. But again, it's like when I say sampling, sort of on purpose, just like it's fun to hear music sampled, or in movies when they reference another movie, like this is like the Siddur and the Machzor are doing that, right?
Yes.
So this is part of the source.
Thank you.
Rabbi, Nebuchadnezzar was a polytheist. And so Daniel's God, gods of the Jews, is just one of the gods in his realm, and so that if that God gave him useful information, that was considered, it's not surprising that he would believe it. Secondly, Daniel had nothing to lose. If he didn't give him a prophecy, he would be killed. And so, Daniel really, maybe he divined it himself, or maybe it was through God, but Daniel had to give him a prophecy or he'd be dead. So,
Why don't, yeah, right. So again, like I don't think it's useful to, or for me, it's not useful to like try and like what really happened, like that, like there is no really happened. Like like it's within the story. God gives them the prophecy, but certainly, again, logically, everyone else is an idiot for not giving a shot. Like you're gonna die anyway. Go up and take your swing. Like if you're like you're being called to bat, may as well swing and see what happens. You'd have to be an idiot, to mix my sports metaphors, to take a knee. Take the pitch, like that's great. So yes, of course he should do it, and everyone else is an idiot for not doing it. The point of the story, like there's no like, oh, like did Daniel like make it up and things like that. Like that's the entire point of the story is that God gives it to him. Like that's not there's no but yeah, and as for the polytheist, right? I mean, he says that your God is the God of gods, right? Like there are lots of gods out there. Yours clearly number one. Lots of teams out there, whatever it might be. Like the Dodgers number one. There's lots out there, but like yours is clearly the top. Proof. So yeah, he's not literally saying that I'm abandoning all my other gods. Like yours, tippy top. All right, Adkan. We will pick up next week, chapter 3. I'm impressed we made it through all 49 verses of chapter 2.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.